Ladies and gentlemen, I'm on. First of all, well done for getting here tonight, managing to make it through the tube strike. Welcome to the Just Share lecture. I'm delighted to have with us this evening Ruth Dearnley from Stop the Traffic with this provocative question, is prevention possible? Before I introduce Ruth to you, I'm just going to say a little bit about who I am and why I'm here. I've been a director for many years with ECCR. We've got a banner there. There's a good synergy between ECCR and the work that Just Share does, in that both are concerned about challenging social justice. In both cases, they're looking to engage with companies and with the city, engage around social justice and economy. ECCR is a church-based investor coalition, and it brings together large and small investors, including some corporate investment houses and all the major church institutions in the UK. Two of those, the Church of England and the Methodist Church, have really quite significant investment operations. We also have a role with individuals as well. Many of us have the opportunity potentially to influence companies either through letter writing or through investment operations in ways that may be surprising to some of us. So we could influence maybe through our pensions. We could influence maybe through writing to our banks, seeing how banks are investing, through the employers, people that we work with, and of course, if you're a church member, ask questions about how your churches are investing their money. And my 9-to-5 job is working for the Methodist Church, and part of my role is to ask those questions, if you like, from within. As a church-based agency, ECCR is also launching at the moment an Ethical Money Churches program, which local churches can sign up to and become ethical money churches, asking questions of their church institutions, but also helping to raise awareness amongst the congregations. I'm just going to introduce to you our Chief Executive, John Arnold, who is here. John, if you'd wave your hand. If you've got more questions on that, talk to either myself or John afterwards. But in order for us to be able to move forward on these issues as investors, we very often need behind us a substantial degree of public awareness as well, and some campaigning. When we meet with senior executives and board members about the impact of their operations in various parts of the world or in different contexts, it's crucial for them to know that beyond the company and beyond the boardroom, there is also a public interest. Companies are much more willing to move on these issues if there's the potential of reputational risk attached, and that requires public awareness, which is where groups such as Just Share and Stop the Traffic are really crucial to making change. I've met Ruth 2 times before, I think. Both occasions are meetings with Nestlé, the last one just on Monday of this week. And in that capacity, that's, if you like, an illustration of this twofold approach. I was present as representing an investor organization and as someone involved in international policy advice. Ruth representing from the perspective of a policy and campaign group. And that's an example on some occasions as to how the two come together. Nestlé, of course, is a company whose name tends to get hairs rising on the back of your neck rather easily because of the history of baby milk. But there are a lot of challenges for them in many other areas, including sourcing of commodities such as cocoa and forced labour, and indeed human trafficking, which brings us to our topic of today. I'm looking forward to hearing from Ruth and learning a lot more about this area of human trafficking. So I'm going to move now simply to introducing Ruth to us. Ruth has been Chief Executive of Stop the Traffic since May 2008, but has been involved with Stop the Traffic since 2005. Her background, she has a law degree and a background in education. Ruth co-presents a weekly radio show called In Good Company on Christian Premier Radio. She's now leading Stop the Traffic and building a global team of activists across 5 continents, working with thousands of volunteers, but working also with the business and with the enforcement community. Ruth's leadership of Stop the Traffic led her to being honoured with the award of an OBE in 2014. So, Ruth, would you like to come and give us your lecture? Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. I think you're quite remarkable for being here. As a commuter myself, this is a second day of doing this, isn't it? And battling our way through. So thank you for being here. Is prevention possible? Can we stop the traffic? I get asked that a lot. Let me just paint a picture, 2 pictures, both of which I wasn't present at, but both did something remarkable. One was Roger Bannister. Does anyone know what Roger Bannister did? He ran, and he broke a record, the very first person to run a mile underneath 4 minutes. Yes, I can't remember the year. I was just looking it up. But yes, he ran faster than anyone else. It was a day that you can see the film on YouTube regularly. Many takes. It's very moving. It inspired films, which some of you may remember. And it was a remarkable event. Why? Because for years and years and years, people had been attempting to get under the 4-minute mile. In fact, he had. Roger had. And on that very day, something remarkable happened, and he did it. Do you know how long after he managed it, his record stood? In all humanity, for as long as anyone has ever recorded it, Roger Bannister was the first man to run under 4 minutes. It went round the world, not on Twitter. But it did go around the world. Do you know how long his record stood? A matter of days. A matter of days. Look it up. A matter of days, and someone else did it. Something's remarkable about setting an example and people believing that it's possible. Roger Bannister did it because he ran faster than anyone else. Another name, Dick Fosby. What did Dick Fosby do? You're good on sport. I'm glad you're here. He was competing in the high jump at the Olympics, and 1968, wasn't it? Because it was that Olympics. And he did the high jump, and he did and broke a record at that Olympics. And again, go on YouTube and you can see some very fragile black and white footage. But what he did is he did something different. He did what created lots of people to laugh at him. People who saw him training, actually, his own fellow competitors gathered round and thought that he had become unstable. Because he decided for the first time in history that he would not just try and jump higher, but do it completely differently. So he decided that he would run up to it and go over on his back. And from that came, and I can remember this as a child, because in 1968 I was 3, so you don't have to try and guess or calculate, but I can remember this being known as the Fosby flop. And now, when you watch the Olympics in London on the TV, there is nobody that runs to the high jump and just leaps over. Everybody does it Dick's way. Stop the traffic. Is it possible? Anyone who looks at history will often argue with me that it is not. I take inspiration from both Eric and Dick in that we have to look, but we also have to create. And we don't just look historically and say, what did people do in the past? We learn from that, but we need to look differently. Because in this moment, in 2014, we have different tools to our hand. We have different challenges. So stop the traffic. And forgive me, that's the end of the sport motif. But if you can remember anything from today, I hope that the answer to the question is yes. And I hope that we'll be inspired together by Fosby flops. Because everybody laughed at him. They had scientists who told him that it was physically impossible. He had people and doctors who came to him to say that he would dislocate his back. That is all a nonsense to us now, when we watch how people have broken the record, purely because of the Fosby flop. So where will we be in another 20 years? Will we just be trying to do what we've done now better? Or will we be creative, innovative, and pioneer a new way of thinking? Stop the Traffic began. It began as an inception of an idea. I come to you not because I'm particularly clever or have a PhD in international development, so forgive me if you have. You can come and teach me some things afterwards over a glass of wine. It came because there was a moment where a synergy of friendship. Some of you may know Steve Chalk. Steve Chalk is the founder of Oasis. He's a friend of mine. We were sitting one night, we were drinking a glass of wine. That's always when the best ideas happen. And he said there is a moment he felt, having encountered this issue, this growing issue of people trafficking, through the work that he was doing in his own global international agency, looking at those who were on the outside of society. And in a children's centre that had been founded in the middle of Mumbai by the railway station, about 10 years before our glass of wine, the person running it had realized that 2 young children who had been in this children's centre, which was a very smart word for a tarpaulin, they'd gone missing. And so Phil had gone off to find where they were. He knew where they lived. They lived on the railway platform with their father, who was an alcoholic. And when he went to find them, the father was there, and he asked the father where the children were, aged 6 and 8. And the father said, I sold them for $10 each for the bottle that I now have drunk. That moment was a story that got told. And held here in the hearts of those who stood in that railway station and in the organisation, realising that this was a phenomenon of something new. No one was using the word trafficking, but people knew that this trade was emerging, was evolving, where the buying and selling of people was becoming quite systemized. Hence, that night, Steve said to me, I think this is the moment to begin something to start to draw attention to the issue of the buying and selling of people. And the word that was vaguely now around was that of people trafficking. Why then? Because the following year, about 17 months after our glass of wine, there was going to be a big celebration. It was going to be the bicentennial, the 200-year anniversary of the abolition of transatlantic slavery, which happened due to the work of many people, but for here it would be focused on that of William Wilberforce, who had, and you might have seen it in the film Amazing Grace and others, had led about a 13, 14-year campaign in order to bring legislation in that would make it illegal to allow those boats to dock and for the government and the ministers, the government ministers, and the churches, and the businesses to be growing very fat on the profits. And Steve said at that moment there will be a loud noise in terms of celebrating what happened 200 years before. But that was the moment. That was the moment to bring attention to the fact that if Wilberforce had stood there that day, he would not desire to party. He would look around our world and realize that the buying and selling, the entrapment, the deception of people was growing, and it was growing at a very frightening rate. And so Stop the Traffic was born. It was born not because we sat down and decided we would look at a 5-year plan. It wasn't because someone had donated to us a large amount of money. It was born from 2 glasses of wine and a probably good idea at a good moment on the back of an envelope. And I just say that to you because I wonder when it was that Dick Frosby thought, I could try and do it a different way. From that moment, Stop the Traffic decided to be a voice, a noise, to empower communities. The very heart of who we are is the belief that every person who is trafficked from a community to a community. And the essential nature is to find out what that community knew and what they didn't see or what they allowed to happen. And what this community sees, notices, spots, and stops. We were about to launch with a website. There was a lot of conversation whether we should allow everyone to just encounter the website or whether we should print some materials too, but we were very modern, so we just decided everyone would go on a website. That, when I look now, is only 8 years ago, and that is a bizarre question to ask. We launched and we found ways to bring people together, to create resources, and to enable people within their communities, wherever they were, to be able to take part and even, dare I say, have fun. Because one of the most important things about being able to stop people trafficking is to realize what a difficult marketing challenge you have with such a horrendous crime. You see, so many of these issues become the property of the expert. They become the property of those who have either studied it in depth and understand the complexities of the deep layers of which trafficking is one. But in the very nature of how that is presented, it pushes everyone else out away because it makes it impossible for us to engage. And yet, prevention is only ever possible if the whole community fights it. So, Stop the Traffic in the years to come has built within it a resourcing mechanism, a way to be able to answer 3 questions. And these are the core questions which I live and die with. First, we're there to answer, what is people trafficking? Second question, how does it affect me? Third question, what can I do about it? Someone in a United Nations meeting turned to me and said, I think they're rather simple. I turned and looked and I said, forgive me for using simple language, but I believe that when you use simple language, you've probably got a little bit closer to the truth. I think it doesn't matter who we are, whether we sit here and we're the business or an investor in one of the companies on these streets around us, whether we have millions running through our fingers or whether we are a 9-year-old, whether we are someone in enforcement or whether it's my neighbor, if it's my mum, if it's my child, or if it's me. Those 3 questions are the only questions that we need. Because we will only know what to do if we understand how it affects us. And actually, in many places, you can find an awful lot to read about it, but it will never tell you what you can do. So, Stop the Traffic began with that year-long campaign. I was with Steve in a meeting, and we decided in the meeting, I can remember hearing him to the right. The meeting had our one employee, that was the administrator, because as all of you know, you can't do anything if you haven't got an administrator. I was a volunteer, and we gathered some NGOs and other people who were beginning to sense that trafficking was an issue they needed to look at. And Steve said, what we're going to do is we're going to raise a petition, because this has never been done before, and we're going to collect this petition and we're going to take it to the United Nations. And I remember sitting there thinking, okay, and he says, we're going to raise 1 million signatures. At which point I was really praying he might stop talking, because I knew these things often escalate. And then at one point, as we walked out of the room, I said, do you know where the United Nations is? And he went, no. So the challenge was, how were we, and I use the word we as a royal we, how were we going to raise this petition of 1 million? And where do you take it to the United Nations? And so then began part of this extraordinary journey of meeting incredibly generous people and going around the United Nations in Geneva and then finding Vienna and New York and finding that on almost the same time that Stop the Traffic was founded, UN Gift was founded, the UN, United Nations Global Initiative to Fight Trafficking, a multi-agency project, just as with HIV/AIDS, etc., where there was a focus to fight trafficking with agencies, WHO, ILO, UNODC, UNICEF, to come together and give this a focus. And they were going to put on a conference in Vienna. It was going to be called the UN Gift Forum. And all the countries of the world were going to come in 2008, February. So we decided that when we had collected our million, we would take it to that forum. So we found our way through into these remarkable relationships, then being interviewed about who we were, and there we were at the Gift Forum, delivering our petition, not of 1 million, but of 1.5 million signatures of people, communities, all ages across 5 continents. We did it with a video because, as I learned, when you do a global petition, it's not all about writing your name. And as we delivered it, Steve spoke with all 192 countries there about the issue of trafficking, about the commitment of communities, the necessity for people to be able to take action. In fact, to say prevention is possible. In our generation, we should be able to stop the traffic. Following on from that, we worked in partnership with the UN. Steve Chalk was given a role within the United Nations as the special advisor for community action against people trafficking. So there we were now working with an organization that a year ago we didn't even know where its front door was. And then we began to build a relationship with enforcement. Stop the Traffic is about prevention. Stop the Traffic is about engaging millions and millions of people around the world who can answer the question, how does it affect me in my community and what can I do about it? Stop the Traffic, in order to answer that, needs to partner with enforcement. Because as we know, so much of this has been focused on the rescue of people who have been caught. So we, through a journey, again, of relationships, we signed an official partnership with SOCA, the Serious Organised Crime Agency, which has now evolved into the National Crime Agency. And that brought us 2 strategic partnerships, government with the UN, and SOCA, which links to all the other, Interpol, Europol, and across the states, enforcement bodies. And who were we? We were the community piece in the middle. Why did they want to engage with us? Because they knew you won't stop trafficking unless you engage in the community. And the community is a really difficult place for government and for enforcement to form those relationships. I could stand here all night and tell you amazing stories of how this journey has evolved, but where Stop the Traffic has taken us. Of how we're growing and grown across continents with thousands of activists and people doing amazing things. But I want to come to the stage of asking, do I believe, now having been in this and being CEO of the organization for the last 5 years, is it possible? Absolutely. I believe disruption of this global system is possible, more now than it was, because Wilberforce was limited to a horse. We have technology which, if added to by people and a revolution, can bring enormous fuel to disrupt the roots of this around the world. But one of the greatest obstacles, one of the greatest challenges is the fact that this crime thrives in the dark. It, fueled by the secrecy, the fact that for some of us, or most of us, walking down this street, we may not know the signs. The fact that for so many still trafficking is only represented by an image of sex trade. The fact that this crime needs to be explored and understood in its myriad of ways of how it's systemized around this world. Trafficking starts with one thing: deception. I know many of you may have seen the film Taken, have you seen the film Taken? It sort of took the story of trafficking, a Hollywood blockbuster with Liam Neeson. I often go and get asked to go and speak at places, especially universities and students, and people will be showing Taken. As much as it's a great blockbuster, it's not really real. There are people around this world that are physically taken, kidnapped, smuggled, put into a boot, think that they were standing, waiting for a friend, and out of the blue, snatched. But actually, just to get them to the roadside involved deception. Deception is the currency of a trafficker. There is a job for you in a place that you could never believe. There's a promise of an education for your child that would rescue them from the place that they're in. In your traveling of your gap year, there's going to be money and a safe job here. Your desire is to travel. We can give you a journey you'll never forget. They are the promises that traffickers peddle every moment of every day. And this crime is being fed and fueled by the greed of a profit that is unbelievable. Because this crime now is the fastest growing crime in the world today. Why? Why is it the fastest growing? Because it is purely the fact that it can make more money and less risk. If I were to take an illegal bullet and shoot it, I can only shoot it once. If I can take an illegal drug, I can only inject it once. But if I take a person and I can use them in 10 different ways, if I can exploit them and I can do 20 times a day, day after day after day after day, that makes a lot of money. The profits of this business are way beyond anything that anyone has recognized. And this is creating more profit. The tool of being able to sell quantities of people, the systemized globalization of trafficking means that I can trade from country to country, room to room, border to border, and I need never leave. I can have layers of operatives, but at the highest level, I can live my life looking as though I am a powerful influencer in the world, but my trade that's hidden is bringing me millions and millions and millions. And the ways that I can develop to traffic, to exploit, to dislocate, to keep vulnerable, I can take a boy in a cannabis farm, I can pimp him out. I can bring him back, I can put him in a restaurant, I can send him to a rug factory, I can move him. This area has brought great creativity from traffickers, which is why my passionate belief is we will only fight this if we match that creativity, if we match that adaptability and flexibility and scope and global, local influence. So Stop the Traffic has built relationships with government, the UN. Enforcement, we now hold our own intelligence hub, made of lots of retired police officers in different forms of anti-money laundering, terrorist, border control, customs and excise, undercover. We have a whole team of them. Business people, we have, under Finance Against Trafficking, built business groups and consortiums to give their intellectual capital to create what? Tools. Tools to help you answer, what is trafficking? How does it affect me and my business? And what can I do about it? And we need to link people around the world. Stop the Traffic is led in Australia, New Zealand, India. We're working in Brazil with our gift box project that was actually just outside those 2 doors during the Olympics, where we built a structure, 5 of them, big boxes that went around London across those 6 weeks to raise awareness. We did it with the United Nations. We trained 400 volunteers. We had 500,000, 500,000 people go through them. We're about, I heard today, to build 5 more, God willing, for Rio. There are people interested in Slovakia. We're looking in Germany and Holland and Brazil. Stop the Traffic is leading, looking at the sex industry in Amsterdam and the red light district. This is about building and sharing, gathering communities, realizing what you see, raising awareness, uncovering from the darkness, bringing it into the light, and most of all then sourcing the information that nobody knows. Because at the moment, nobody knows the scale of this. It is just guesswork. And that's why the traffickers are ahead of us. I finish with a story, and it is a story, and it indicates the story on the day when I feel like I'm not doing very well. Do you have days like that? I got a phone call in. The phone call rang and said, I am ringing your office because I am very cross. Can I speak to the inquiries department? There were 3 of us at that stage in the team, so I looked at everyone and said, I have a very cross lady on the phone. Does anyone want to talk to her? Of course, everyone said, no, Ruth, of course, you do it. So I started to speak to her. I asked her why she was cross. She said, well, 18 months ago, my granddaughter arrived home from school. She came home, she got us into the kitchen, she sat us down, and she told us that she had had a lesson. Stop the Traffic. We had created a lesson on our chocolate campaign. I've only been given 20 minutes. Our chocolate campaign is key to what we do. That's why I was meeting Nestlé. That's why yesterday I met another company. Our chocolate campaign is changing the industry around the world. Not me, thousands of people like this 9-year-old that won't give up. Who's got power? The Nestlé CEO or thousands of vociferous 9-year-olds? She said, this 9-year-old, she said, my granddaughter came home, sat us down, said, we've done a lesson called Chagga and the Chocolate Factory. Do you know that our chocolate is not traffic-free? We all sat there, looked at her and mumbled, no, we didn't know. She said, from now on, we are not eating any chocolate in our household unless it's traffic-free. Stop the Traffic has built a traffic-free good chocolate guide. Here it is, she says, I've printed it off. This tells you what we can eat. She said, I have also printed a statement. She said it was given to all the family and we all had to sign it to say that we would never eat chocolate unless it was traffic-free. That wasn't part of our pack. She said, so we all sat round, and she said, I began to listen and understand a bit more of it. But then my granddaughter was part of her school, and she went in and she asked to see the head teacher. She said to the head teacher, we've had a lesson about traffic-free chocolate. She said, do you know that there is chocolate in our lunch boxes, and it's not traffic-free? So she said, I think we need to do an assembly on it. So she asked if she could do it. She said, Stop the Traffic has got an assembly on the website, so we could download it and I could do it with you. So the head teacher thought she had no point arguing. She delivered this, and then she put out a piece of paper, and no one was allowed out of the whole school until they signed that they would only eat traffic-free chocolate. She was on a visit to the hospital. As she went through the hospital, there was a vending machine on her left. She looked at the vending machine. She said to her mum, there's traffic chocolate in the vending machine. So the 9-year-old said, I need to go and visit the chief executive of the hospital. Her mum said, "You can't do that. We're here for an appointment." So the daughter said, "Well, we'll have to come back." So she came back, she sat down. She said to the chief executive of the hospital, "Do you know about traffic-free chocolate?" After about a few minutes, he did know about it, and she'd informed him that in his vending machine there was chocolate. And she said to him, "This is a place that heals people." So to a 9-year-old, it's very clear that you can't have chocolate that is the blood, sweat, and tears of young boys my age. That is in our pack. So the chief executive changed the chocolate in the vending machine. Not only that, he changed it in the cafeteria. Then she went to her church and she told everybody, "I think I need to preach." She got permission to go into the pulpit and tell everybody, and instead of coffee and some soggy biscuit, they had a chocolate fondue party, because that's one of the Stop the Traffic resources. And no one was allowed out the building unless they signed that they would never eat any chocolate unless it was traffic-free. And the woman on the end of the phone said, "And we are exhausted. We thought this would be a fad. We were hoping it would become something else." She will not give up. She's been in the paper. She's changed the street. The community is now aware of what chocolate. There are more letters going to Nestle and Kraft and Cadbury's from our community for Stop the Traffic than anywhere else in the country. And she said, and my granddaughter turned to me last week and she said, "But Granny, you are still not doing it at work." And so the woman said to me, "So I'm phoning you today to tell you that if you turn on your radio and listen, I'm making my maiden speech in the House of Lords, and it's on traffic-free chocolate." Do I think prevention is possible? With a world full of 9-year-olds like that? Yes. With business, enforcement, intelligence, government. All need to lead the way, but never undermine the power of an individual with a passion and a belief that they can change the world. Let's never grow out of that. And let's always view it in a way that Dick viewed, which is, let's think of new ways. Let's not try and do it like those who have gone past. Let's learn from them. We can't just do what they did more, faster. We need to think differently. So I hope that we'll all go away with a sense of what our Fosby flop may look like. And together, we will disrupt this trade that ensnares people, one person every 30 seconds. So during the time I have spoken to you, yet more have been ensnared. And we will not do enough if we just rescue, however critical that is. We must prevent it. So together, we will stop the traffic. Thank you.
Ruth, yes, thank you very much. That was really inspiring to have the whole story of the journey and to see how, in such a short space of time, the journey has come so far. And that, I think, gives me a lot of encouragement to think that it could go an awful lot further in a short space of time, too. We've got some minutes now. where we have the opportunity to ask Ruth some questions. We've got about 10 minutes for that, and then we would love you to stay and join us and, for some refreshments afterwards and to continue those conversations. But can I ask, who would like to ask Ruth questions? John.
Ruth, I think what you've just spoken to us is really inspiring. And as we were talking a bit earlier from the fair trade experience that I've had and seen the steps that have been made, but clearly there's more to be done, and it's vitally important that should happen. From the ECCR perspective, I'm thinking about the message to go back to my membership, and these are individual faith investors who have shareholdings in companies, and also, as Steve mentioned, the corporate membership that we have. And, what more should they be doing? What advice would you be giving to me to tell to my membership to actually, let's focus a bit on this topic, this vitally important topic, and what can we do?
Trafficking's only about, I said it's about greed, but actually it's about one thing: money. So when I was sitting on my train, I talk a lot on my train about trafficking. It's amazing now. People even move away from me. But I live up in the Chilterns, and so there's an awful lot of people who are investing an awful lot of money or making a lot of money on my train. And so one day we had a huge conversation about the implications of that. This is only about money. And so Finance Against Trafficking, and again, forgive me, go and look at the website and have a look at the business people who have got involved in that, from lawyers, accountants, FTSE 100 CEOs, people who deal the money systems. The money that is flowing around this world includes the proceeds that is coming from the investment of trafficking. And so the first thing is to look at the tool that we have just launched. It went live last week. It's called Chain Checker. It is answering those three questions. What is trafficking? How does it affect me? And what can I do about it? So to anyone who asks me that, I would instantly say, for a very small sum, and Stop the Traffic doesn't charge anything for any of our resources, but the finance team decided, the business team decided that they would put a small fee on Chain Checker. I understand why. It's a very small fee. But you can download it, and it is literally a starting point, because what it does is it starts to show how trafficking kisses any business. Because most would think that it is purely looking at anti-money laundering triggers and processes. And we have within Finance Against Trafficking one of the top anti-money laundering experts. She spoke for Stop the Traffic at a recent event The Guardian held, if you saw that or knew anything about that, on supply chains 2 weeks ago. But it is not just money laundering. It is the use of your property. If you're renting properties, where's that coming from? It is your supply chain, which is the issue around chocolate. It's the issue around cotton. We've just launched a campaign called Make Fashion Traffic Free, focusing on cotton in southern India. Nobody in the whole of the garment industry can say that their clothing is traffic free. We cannot build a traffic free cotton good chocolate guide like we did for chocolate. We can't, because there isn't any. Because the bits of the supply chain that have been focused on the seeding and the garment making, those two ends are being looked at, but we're looking at the bit in the middle of the weaving, dyeing and spinning. And if you've seen everything after the Roma Plaza and all the media around that, most retailers only look to one tier, the first tier of their suppliers. So there's a huge challenge that is not going to go away. So there's your supply chain, and everyone's got one. As the chief executive of a hospital found out from what was in his vending machine. So there's your supply chain, your anti-money laundering. There is your pensions and your investments. We've got an expert within Finance Against Trafficking that looks particularly at that. And then, of course, there's your business travel. One of my team was part of a big oil company and regularly used a hotel. I won't say who it was, but when they arrived at it, on the menu was regularly drinks, snacks, and women. And so when she reported this back, then the company had a voice. And if I say, what can you do? I think it is no different. That's why you might ask, with this big subject, I tell you the story of a 9-year-old. Because I think ignorance is not it is an excuse. I didn't know about this 10 years ago. I didn't know anything about it. I walk in and I speak at things and everyone's got chocolate snacks out, and I can start to see everyone get really, really nervous and start to sweat as I talk about the chocolate campaign. And then one person actually started kicking the chocolate to the side because they were trying to hide it. And I said, guilt gets us nowhere. I said, you didn't know when you bought all that chocolate about this issue, so we're all going to eat it. And I said, and I'll eat some too. But next time you buy, you are responsible. And that's why I believe that knowledge is so important. It's the key. The information that you can have from Chain Checker as a beginning. You kickstart something, you make something possible. And then the knowledge starts to grow. Because you can't stop. And then it is our responsibility to do with the knowledge that which we know. And then we have the power to do the ripples. And I tell the story of the 9-year-old because what she didn't do is form a committee. And I do think we have to watch within our own structures of how we become intransigent and don't want to face truth. Do you know the greatest obstacle to this issue, I believe, is denial. Denial. There's a chemical that a marketeer was explaining to me when something is so awful that the brain actually will deny it. This is terrible. So what we as Stop the Traffic are trying to do is overcome that hurdle of denial. And I face it every day. And I'm not going to just look at the chocolate companies, but when I went to one and I sat in their board meeting 8 years ago, this is not our issue, this is not a problem. You read the biography of William Wilberforce, written by William Hague. I think it's one of the best. It is exactly the same issue. Denial. It's not us. It's not happening. And yet, once you begin to realize, yes, it is us, and it is happening, but they always then say to us, Stop the Traffic, you're making it worse. And then the next one is, yes, it is us, but it's a very long-term solution, and we know what we're doing, and actually, you need to step out the way. And then you'll get to the stage where then, could you help us? Denial is a force. And we are still in that stage of denial. And so to yours, I would say the power of money needs to lead the way. The 9-year-old has an impact that is extraordinary. But I say business has more power than any government in this world. And business and what it does with its money in terms of its whole supply chain. And it is about bravery. When I stand in finance settings, I spoke at the Anti-Money Laundering Forum in London, and I said, I'm looking for brave people. Because it is about speaking truth. It is about being able to say, this is affecting us. And here's what we're trying to do about it. And I say, join the club.
I think we've got one more question here, please. We'll make this the last question. If you have questions after that, then come and speak to Ruth afterwards.
I'm afraid I don't exactly know everything about the chocolate campaign and so on, but for me, it raised a question around logos. Are you working with government? I mean, it's a simple thing. Logos on product.
Yeah.
That would, because as a consumer, it's such a complicated subject. But, if I see a logo, then I'm reassured.
Yes, logos. That's a great question, the logos. That is what we started. If you went and looked at the website, I mean, again, I do say that. It's got tons of stuff on it. It will tell you the chocolate story. If I had another hour, then I could tell you the chocolate story. It is extraordinary. It is extraordinary. But what we were asking for traffic-free chocolate is that we wanted it independently certified. That's the key. And we wanted that communicated to consumers at point of purchase. Because we are the representative of the world that buys, the purchasing power. I learned, and I'm sure it's not a secret fact that I can tell it, if not, you can wipe it off, but we learned together on Monday with Nestle, guess how many, is anyone work for Nestle here? You'd be able to tell us. Guess how many Nestle products are sold every day? 5 million? 1 billion. Wasn't it?
Billion.
1 billion, which I reckon makes 8 billion a week. And I was tarting it out. So when they were talking, and I'm saying, what's the power of the consumer? So I raised my hand, and Stephen will probably, I'm a bit of a, I said, I represent the billion. Because I am the purchaser. So we wanted point of purchase to be communicated to. And we wanted to know and have it independently verified. Now, at the time, there was very little chocolate in this country that was independently verified. And the best lever that we have at the moment to do that is Fair Trade, Rainforest Alliance, and UTZ, 3 certifiers globally that are marketing a good competition of market share in terms of all of them doing different grades in other ways, but all of them saying that they are fighting to eradicate child trafficking in those plantations. There is a good, healthy debate which must happen about how that is happening and how to keep that on its toes, but it's what we've got. As I said at the time, the industry, the chocolate industry, and you can track this back, in 2001, recognized that there was an issue. Why? Because a congressman and a senator in the USA had discovered that part of the incoming supply chains of cocoa beans into the States actually were bringing trafficked labor. So they called the chocolate companies together and they said, we're going to sue you if you bring chocolate companies in. And we're going to take you to court because we can't have the proceeds of crime, which is what it was, into our supply chain. So they had a negotiation, as you do, and the ICI, the International Cocoa Initiative, was set up. I'm doing a very plotted history here, in terms of the NGOs who wanted to be part of it, government piece, and the business piece. They committed to eradicate exploitative child labor, the worst forms, trafficking, by 2005. Our campaign started in 2005/6, and part of the person that I was working with had enormous detail and knowledge of this. He's the man who went to the train platform and discovered the alcoholic father. Phil came and said, this issue is ripe for using. Why? Because none of the industry had denied it. They all knew there was a problem and they promised to eradicate it by last year. They'd said they'd do it by 2008. We looked at the accounts, there was very little money going in and any commitment going in to change it. Because what we do know is that you need a voice and a leverage, you need a pressure, Steve said, in order to bring change. So Stop the Traffic's chocolate campaign was begun. Verification at point of purchase. Lots has changed. It's actually not new what we're doing, because that's what Wilberforce did. If you read that biography, he really struggled until he connected the issue that was happening at the port side with the sugar that went in people's tea. That's how he leveraged activity. Gandhi did it with salt. I think we got the best deal, chocolate. We've got a long way to go. There is much discussion that I can talk to you around that, and companies are moving. But yesterday, a chocolate company flew from Europe to meet us because of a campaign that we launched over Easter that got 10,000 people onto their Facebook and website talking very nicely about timelines and demands and wanting their chocolate to be traffic-free. And as I tell them all, there's a dangerous generation of 9-year-olds that are not going to give up. And for all of us, I believe, it starts in our shopping trolleys. That's why sex trafficking is not an easy place to start, because most of us think it's nothing to do with us, although it's probably happening in our town. And yet all of us shop. And the greatest change can be the fact that we stop and pause by the Mars bar. And we decide to not deny that this issue is our issue and to buy something different. And so I'd like to say for 8 years I have not eaten a Mars bar. I have been sorely tempted. I have been so tempted, and here's a sad fact, and are you recording this? I'd like you not to record this bit. But I have stood there and thought, even if I eat that, who's going to know? No one's bothered about me. And then I think there might be a newspaper reporter hiding behind that shelf, and suddenly there'll be a picture of me. This is sad because no one wants to take a picture of me, but I think there'll be a picture of me eating a Mars bar and then the whole of our chocolate campaign, and I've let that 9-year-old down. Now, I'm only telling you that because I'm as fragile as anyone. Because it is difficult to change what we're used to and our demands. That's denial. But it'll only happen if we change. It'll only happen if all of us decide, what is trafficking, how does it affect me, and what can I do about it? And it might start with our chocolate in our shopping trolley next time.
Thank you very much. It's easy to get overwhelmed with a huge global problem like this, but I think that what you've done is you've inspired me at least to know that there are many people around the world whose power as consumers is a global power. So your enthusiasm and is inspiring to me. Thank you very much for what you've shared with us today, and let's show our appreciation.